Hello there, mattphilleo in the studio. Just had a couple technical difficulties trying to get this live stream going here on YouTube. This was my first attempt here at doing a live YouTube video. I did a test video before, but this one was pre-scheduled. So I thought when the counter clicked down to 0, it would just start recording. But apparently it required a little bit of intervention. That's okay though, because we're here, and I'm so glad you decided to join me here today in my studio, working on this 48 by 72 inch painting. I need to do one thing on the computer and just set up a quick recording from Zoom, and we'll get started in just a second. Okay, and looking at the chat here, we have Mangala. Hope I'm saying your name correct. Welcome, Mangala. And we have JC and Mark watching on your phone. Nice to see you here. Fantastic. All right, we're going to get started here in just a second. I'm going to I'm going to actually look at the chat in a little bit. So what we're going to do is I'm going to do some painting, and then I'm going to look at the chat a little bit later and answer your questions. What I'll probably need to do for next time is just set up an extra computer so I can see what's going on here a little closer to the canvas. But I have this huge 48 by 72 inch canvas here, and it takes up most of my studio. But you can see what's going on. This is a portrait of a couple hiking in New Zealand. I got this as a commission. Almost ashamed to say it, but I got it at the end of last year, beginning of this year. Actually, I think it was beginning of this year that, I got the down deposit on it and got started. And I started working on it right away, but then I had a whole influx of commissions come in, and they were very urgent. And this particular client doesn't have to have it at a certain time. So I always try to get those projects done first that have the most urgency, and just kind of push the other ones ahead a little bit. But I figured, you know what, this has to get done. So I told them I'll have it done for you at the end of October. So that's my goal. I'm really going to be pushing hard next month. I have a show at the beginning of the month, but after that, my schedule's pretty much wide open. And so that's my goal, to get this painting done here. But anyway, I just want to invite you along. When I did a questionnaire on Facebook, on the Realistic Acrylic Portrait School Facebook group, most people said they wanted to see me do the slow glazing technique. And so I figured, what better thing to use to teach than this painting right here, which I am doing the more traditional glazing technique, where I use those very thin, light, translucent layers of acrylic. And I don't know if you can see my palette here, but the way we do this, there's a little bit of glare because I have aluminum foil. I'll bring it a little closer to the camera, but I have all my colors arrayed around here, and then I have matte medium right in the center, and I mix all my colors into that matte medium. I think you can see it a little better now. And so we make a very, very thin glaze of pretty much everything we do, and slowly build it up. Now, obviously, this painting's in progress. It has a few hours into it, not a lot. I just basically have a couple layers on the background. I put an initial wash or two of kind of a light green, and it actually was two different colors. I had kind of a bluish color and a yellowish color that optically mixes into this more of a traditional green. And then I went over the shadows that I had sketched in with the darker green, which is more of an ultramarine blue, raw sienna, and then I think just a little bit of phthalo blue, so that it had a bit of a green tint. And generally the theory is, the darker the shadows, the less potent the color. That's generally how you work. So as you're getting into these lighter areas, you're wanting to use a more vivid color. Here it's going to be less vivid. And that makes sense. You know, when you have a room that's kind of dimly lit, it's going to be, you know, you're not going to see the colors. You can't tell whether the shirt, you know, hanging on the edge of the bed, is that a red shirt or is it green? I mean, when it's really dark, it's hard to tell, you know. So anyhow, that's kind of the theory. But what I want to do is just check in and see how you all are doing here. And I'm just gonna check the chat box really quick. We got Mark, Mona, Les, Christy, and Grayson Engelman. Nice to see you all here. Fantastic. So if you have any questions as I'm working here, just go ahead and pop them into the chat. And then in about 10 minutes or so, I'll look at that and I'll answer your questions. So right now, before I start, as I usually do, I'm just going to ask a quick blessing, and then we'll get started here. So Father, I just ask you bless this painting. I know that apart from you, I can do nothing, but with you, I can do all things. So bless this painting. Help me to be able to capture the details, the nuances, the shading, everything that would make these people look like them. And just that they would be blessed by this painting. It would encourage them. And Father, I pray for all the people watching that you bless them in their artwork that they're doing in their studios. Give them outlets of creativity, new ideas, new opportunities, commissions, exhibitions for their paintings. Just bless them in all of their work, Lord, and in their lives. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so we can't get quite as close as usual because this is such a big canvas. I really had to pull the camera away. So you're not going to see it in as much detail as what we normally do, but hopefully you can kind of get a sense for what's going on here. This is kind of interesting. So this is a new setup for me. I set up my Kindle next to my canvas. I actually have this counterweighted. It's not, this is, you know, has a certain amount of weight to it, so it's not attached with tape, obviously, to a canvas. I actually have a string attached, and then it goes up a cable running across my ceiling, and then I have a weight on the bottom, so I can literally, you know, move this up and down and just adjust it as need be. I can lower it, I can move it over. And then I also have this printed reference just to kind of show the whole thing at a glance. But with this setup, then I can go in and I can zoom in or zoom out on the photos, or I can actually pull up some other reference photos, because the client here gave me a whole bunch of different reference photos. You see in this painting here, this photo was taken when they were, you know, I guess in their mid-age, but he wanted it to look like them back when they were in their 20s. So he gave me several pictures of them when they were younger. And so that's what I can use as supplemental references, just to make those adjustments. So anyway, not really sure what exactly I'm going to work on at this stage. Oh, and by the way, it was kind of interesting too. I don't know if you can see this. I might have to do a supplemental video here of the process, but if you look on my blog at realisticacrylic.com and you just look up in January where I made a post on this painting, I actually combined the photos differently. Like in the original photo, they were really small, and so he wanted them enlarged quite a bit. And then they were separated from each other, so I brought them close together and actually did a design layout on Photoshop and enlarged their sizes, brought them closer together, and then I had to kind of cut and paste pieces of the background because he had wanted the waterfall in the back to be larger than what it was in the original photo he gave me. So I had to splice several different photos together and to make a composition layout on Photoshop that he approved. And then we went ahead and we're doing the painting from that. So that's just a little background on the painting. But if you're curious about the process, maybe it might help you too, in portraits and combining different pictures together. I show you how I did that on Photoshop at realisticacrylic.com. And you can just look that up for free. It's on my blog in January. So, okay. Well, I'm going to get started here. Made you guys wait long enough to see me actually apply paint to the canvas. Appreciate your patience there. And I think what I want to do, let me pull up the photo that I'm actually using here, is just work on the figures a little bit more. I want to see on the woman here, I added a shadow glaze, for her jacket. And I used a pretty vivid color because it's actually fairly vivid, but I want to go in and glaze just a slight glaze on top and begin to get some of that color. But I tell you what, before I can even do that, in my sketching process, I lost some of the luminosity. As I sealed in the sketch, some of the pigment from the colored pencil started, mixing together, and it kind of turned this white into a gray. And because I want this to have a good amount of luminosity on her jacket, I'm going to go in with some titanium white. And what I'm going to do is literally just restore what was lost in that process. So I'm just adding a few highlights here. And so anyway, what we're going to do today is just go for about, I'd say, 45 minutes. I'm not going to keep you any further than 12 o'clock. If you're in Central Time like me, that's lunchtime, and I don't want to keep you guys past your lunchtime. So I just think it's so cool that you guys decided to take a little slice out of your day here and join me here in the studio. I think that's wonderful, and so glad to have you here. Well, again, what I'm doing is just adding some titanium white using a round brush. This is a size 6. It's nothing fancy. I'm adding it in just certain spots. I'm trying to hit just the highlighted areas, not the whole area. So I'm kind of looking at the picture and seeing where the highlights are and just hitting that. And then I'm going to go in, and I'm thinning it out, by the way, with some matte medium. All right, just thinning it out to make it more fluid. Not so much to make it transparent, but more just to make it fluid. So this is something you can do. I mean, when you do a sketch, and I don't know if you guys have this happen to you where you're sketching and you seal it in, if you're using my kind of technique. I don't know if artists normally seal in their sketches before they paint with acrylic. I do, but if you have sealed in your sketch with a clear medium and it gets kind of muddy because your sketch mixes in, with the paint, this is a good way to restore some of that muddiness from the pigment, of your sketching. So that's basically what I'm doing. Now, in a couple minutes, I'm going to answer any questions that you posted on the chat roll on the side. And we'll just go through them one by one and answer your questions. So I want to make sure I do that. Little different format than Facebook Live. I just want to try YouTube because I thought it would be nice to engage my audience on YouTube. And then also, I think the video quality seems like it turns out better on YouTube than on Facebook Live. It seemed like on my last sessions, it kind of blurred things up more than it should have. And so that was another reason I wanted to try YouTube Live. So anyway, I'm just adding that white here and there, in a couple different places, even down here. You might not be able to see the difference, but even on her jacket here, like this, if you look in the reference photo, which you can't see that, but this actually should be almost white. Yeah, that's part of the issue with a really, really big painting is I can't make the reference photo large enough for you to see it. But nevertheless, you just have to take my word on it. This is white. This part of her jacket should just be almost white. It's catching the light, and it's also lighter in color. Okay, so now I'm going to see if there's any questions, and then I'll get back to work for another 10-15 minutes. Any questions? Okay, so I'm gonna have to down right here. Yeah, Mona says she likes being able to see it from this angle and distance. Yep, that's great. Do I have a projector to sketch the drawing out? JC asks. Yes, in this situation, I did use a projector. That's my confession. I'm not ashamed of it, though. I've done tons of freehand sketching, but in a large picture like this, it's way, way easier to project it to get the proportions accurate. However, a projector does not solve all your problems. You still have to go back and refine your sketch, because a projector will often it'll often simplify curves and different things, and you won't be able to tell the difference between foreground and background. It can sometimes add too much detail, sometimes take away detail. So I projected it, but then I had to go back in for another like 3 hours, I think, and sketch it and refine all the lines, make sure the faces were younger, because in the original picture they were much older. So I had to take, you know, their faces from when they were younger, and I freehand sketched the faces in. So yes, I did project it, but just to say, projection is only a part of the process. And it's only one technique you can use. I mean, you can freehand sketch, you can use a grid, which I recommend for most people. And then for larger pictures, yeah, projection is a great way to get it up quickly. Sharon asks, doing a portrait, interested in watching your techniques. Fantastic. Yep, just keep watching these videos here on YouTube. I got a lot of videos. I think I have maybe 60-ish videos on YouTube that you can access for free. And I usually add about one a week. So you can definitely watch here on YouTube. Then I archive some of those at realisticacrylic.com, where I have some written tutorials and printable guides to go with the videos. And then I have full-length courses as well that cover like every aspect from start to finish on portrait painting. And you can find that at realisticacrylic.com in the courses tab. Mona calls that Frankensteining. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, combining the old and the new pictures. And you did that, Mona. You had that on that huge portrait you did of your family. You had to combine all kinds of different things together. So you know what I'm talking about. Mark says, colors would have dried out by now. How come your colors don't? Yeah, so I spray my colors. I spray my paint periodically about every 15 minutes with a little pump sprayer. Just put some water in there and with a fine mist, you know, and just spray the palette, and then I seal it up in a large plastic container when it's not in use. Okay, so any other questions? Looks like that's it. So I'm going to get back to work. All right, so now there's a couple different things I could do, and there's no like one right way to do a painting. I mean, you just have to get the job done eventually. I could go in and darken the background a little bit more, or I could say I want to kind of concentrate on the figures right now. And I think I am going to concentrate on the figures right now, at least a little bit. And then when they're drying, I might do a layer or two on the background. So what I want to do is just add maybe another layer to the man's clothing. And we're going to mix ultramarine blue, romber dark and kind of make a grayish color. Now, you might say, why don't you just use black? You know, I could just use black, but I want to be able to to get just the right mixture here. And there's many different shades of gray. There's not just black. I mean, there's bluish grays, brownish, purplish. Grays can go to any certain tint. And so in this case, to me, it kind of has a somewhat bluish purplish cast. So that's why I'm trying to control the mixture here with ultramarine blue. And a little more romber dark. You guys see that? Just trying to bring it a little closer to the camera so you can see that. Hopefully one day I'll have a film crew in here and they'll be able to do all the recording, and I'll just be able to concentrate on painting. But this will work for now. I want to add a little bit to this layer right here. I still want to get that just a bit bluer. And I'm going to add just a little bit right here, okay, on this section of his jacket. And see, it kind of feathers off at the top. And so there's a couple different ways you can create gradations or shading with the glazing technique. One good technique is you can do a dilution glaze. After you've applied your glaze, you can take some clear medium. You have to work pretty quick, but then you apply that clear medium to the top of the glaze and blend into what you already did. So this was all that one level, okay, one shade. Took some clear medium, kind of just took what was on my brush. I didn't clean it off, okay, but I diluted that with just clear medium and then just added that to the top. And that builds a really smooth gradation. For large areas, that works super, super well. So I really recommend that. It's not hard to do. You can use that anywhere. I mean, you can use that when you're painting a sky. You can use that when you're painting, I don't know what else. Maybe if you had a large basketball on your, anything that has large areas of smooth gradation. If you were doing a large portrait and you had, you know, somebody's forehead, and you know how the forehead, it's a large surface, and so it can have a very gradual shift from light to dark and shading. That would be a great technique. But this technique doesn't work quite as well for very small areas. It's just for large areas like this. You know, areas that are maybe an inch, at least, you know, inch by inch. So I guess that would be a couple square inches around, however that works. So what I want to do is take this same mixture that I have and see where else I can apply it. So I can add another layer down here to his pants that he's wearing. And that didn't make much of a difference. Let's add just a little bit more to it. So take some blue and brown, and I could add black to this. That's not a crime. Just I want to not use straight black by itself. I want to adjust it with either blue or brown or purple or something to shift the color to what I see in the reference photo. So I'm always paying attention to what's in the reference photo, how is that looking, and I want to shift my color to that. So we can see, I mean, this part here is receiving more light. Obviously, this leg is coming forward in space. He's maybe stepping on a rock or something. So this is way lighter than that. I'm trying to get that dimension and that difference between the two. Now, seeing here in this area, this whole section could get darker. And this is the beauty of the glazing technique, by the way. You know, you don't have to use a glazing technique in all of your paintings. You don't even have to use it in every area or during the whole process of your painting. But the beauty of the glazing technique is that I can go over and I can say, you know what, this area here looks a little too light. Let's darken that. And when I darkened it, you can see none of my wrinkles in its jacket, none of the detail disappeared. It's still there. You know, it's still underneath. So I love the versatility. I mean, if you were doing an opaque painting, you could even add glazes on top. And you could say, you know what, my background is too green. I'm gonna make it a little more to the reddish side, a little browner. And you could do a glaze, you know, of burnt sienna, whatever you wanted to add on top of it, and you could shift that over so easily. So for that reason, I love the glazing technique. It does make a mess on your palette, not gonna lie. But I just keep grabbing fresh pieces of aluminum foil, and I kind of fold them to the shape of my palette, just set them down on top of what I've already, you know, had on here. And then it'll stick to this because of the paint beneath it. And I save all this paint, and this stays wet, and I can keep using this until it dries up. And eventually I'll just take that big layer of maybe 5, 6 sheets of aluminum foil and, you know, throw it in a bag, and then I'll recycle it with my aluminum cans, and I get paid for it. So that's just kind of a nice thing you can do. It's just one way of setting up your palette. Okay, so what I want to do is add a little bit of gradation just on the inside of his jacket. I'm going to thin this out. That was a little too dark. And I'm just using this nice wide flat brush. It's just like an inch. It's a tapered angled brush. And I'm just really beating it up. I mean, these are not expensive brushes. I do have some nice brushes. You know, like these are my nicer brushes right here. You know, these guys, I don't use them very much, but these are my workhorses. And these, I just buy them in a big pack, you know, get 10 of them for $10, $15. And they work fine. You know, you just use them, and when they're all used up, then I let my kids use them. When my daughter's up here, she can do some painting, and she's like, Dad, can I have a brush? I'm like, yep, here you go. And she doesn't mind. She's like, thanks, this is perfect. So that's what we do. It's a lot of fun. It is fun to have a studio in your home, and you know, anytime that I'm not recording, my kids can come up and they can do a little watercolor painting. Yeah, I don't have them do acrylic. That's probably not a good idea, you know, just with the mess it makes. But they'll do little watercolor paintings, and we just have a good time. It's a lot of fun. So I'm adding some shading here to the side of his backpack because, again, the light is coming mostly from the top, and so this area needs to be sculpted a little bit. And you might think, man, oh man, Matt, this is going to take you forever doing it this way. Well, it does take a while. I'll admit this process does take way longer than opaque painting, but I think it's worth it. You know, in the end product, you see a lot of luminosity, a lot of depth that you wouldn't see with opaque painting. And back in the Renaissance times, this is the way the old masters used to do those paintings with. They called it the sfumato technique, and the skin was so smooth, and everything was just so smooth, and it just had a vibrance to it. And that's because they did use the glazing technique. Now back then it was oil paints, and they used, you know, linseed oil or whatever to do their applications of paint. Here we're doing that same kind of thing, but we're doing it with acrylic. And so I learned this technique actually from a painting instructor while I was yet in high school. I was a college art instructor at the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. And in that 1-week summer intensive, I mean, I learned more than I did while I was at Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design. I mean, I'm telling you that was my training right there. It was so valuable learning how to do this technique, because prior to that, I really struggled with sketching, you know, something for my canvas, and then painting and losing the detail on the sketch. I'm like, how can I do a detailed sketch? And then I started applying this thick paint to it, and all of a sudden my detail's gone. Like, what do you do? Well, this is a solution for that. You can have all the detail you want in your sketch and just slowly add color and depth to it. And eventually you won't see the sketch. I mean, it'll get obscured by all your detail work. but over time, you know, you're slowly transforming that sketch into a painting. And so it takes longer to do this technique for sure, but it's way less frustrating because you always feel like, you know, I'm just making micro adjustments and I'm slowly bringing this painting to completion. It's kind of like, you know, remember those old Polaroid cameras? If you're old enough, you remember those. You know, you took your picture, the print would come out, you'd hold it under your jacket, you know, if it was cold, and try to, you know, keep it warm. And, you know, 10, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, slowly that picture would start to fade in. And you'd be like, oh, I hope it turned out. I hope it turned out. And they'll say, oh, that's cool. That's cool, you know? And I mean, that was instant. I mean, now we have our cell phones and we can snap a picture and instantly print it on our computer printer. But that Polaroid was cool. Anyway, to say all that, to say that this painting here, the glazing technique is very, very similar to a Polaroid print. I mean, it just slowly develops. You kind of work the whole thing at once and it just fades right in. So it's kind of fun to see it, you know, to see it progress and see it come to pass. And you never have to feel like, oh, I messed up the painting, because you can always make an adjustment. Now, if you get too dark with your glazes, then yeah, it's a little harder, but you can still fix it. But this is why I recommend going very, very light to begin with, because see, what I'm doing is I'm establishing the major values and I'm building a foundation. So I have this very dark shadow right here on her leg, and it's very solid. But then there's an additional mid-tone that I just captured. And then there's a lighter tone right here. There's just all kinds of different nuances. And when I glaze, I can really slowly bring them to life. I'm going to see if there's any more questions that might have popped up here. Take your questions here, okay? Just see if you guys have any questions. So Mona asks, do you ever use the airbrush medium? Yeah, I have never used an airbrush before. I used a paint sprayer back when I was in high school. This painter who did apartments asked if I could paint some clouds for him in one of his apartment buildings, like a sky with clouds, and he gave me this big paint sprayer. And I used that and actually made some pretty decent clouds, but I've never actually used an airbrush. Or are you talking about airbrush medium? That's a certain kind of medium. I don't, yeah, I've never used that before. Never used, unless that's a certain medium that airbrush artists use to thin out their paint. Yeah, I'm sorry guys, I've never used that before. Well, I guess I'm learning from you guys today as well. That's good. I really like matte medium, the consistency of it, and I can get a whole gallon of matte medium at Nova Color for $28, a whole gallon. I mean, you normally spend like $25 on a pint at the art store, and that's what, 16 fluid ounces. A gallon is 128 fluid ounces. I mean, so that's what, about eight times the amount for the same price. Yeah, but so yeah, Mona says you might want to try it sometime. Yeah, I might try it. What does it do different than matte medium? What does it do? Just kind of curious. Does it thin out your paint? Does it make it dry faster? So it's like water. So it's just the consistency is really, really thin. Okay. Great for washes. Yeah, I might have to look into that. I'm not sure as to the cost, because, you know, I use up so much matte medium. I mean, if I didn't get my matte medium from Nova Color and I had to buy it from the art store, I might go broke painting, literally. So you're saying pay up, huh? It's that expensive, huh? Well, yeah, I mean, some things are worth the price. For me, I think matte medium is great, but you gotta try different things and use what works for you. So no worries, Mona. All right, we're gonna go for another 15-ish minutes, and we'll take us up to the top of the hour and see if you have any more questions in about 10 to 15 minutes. I'm just gonna grab a quick drink of water. All right, now let's I always like to have a towel on hand just so I can dry off my brushes. A lot of rags everywhere in my studio. Okay, so I would like to add maybe just a little more shading to the man's face. That's kind of a little bit of a deviation from what we've been working on, but that's okay. I take this flat brush. I guess that's a 1/4 inch, no, 3/8. And I'm gonna add some matte medium to the top, some fresh matte medium. And I'm gonna take some raw umber dark. And his skin tone is a little more olive, they are Chinese, or actually he's from Brunei, this fellow here and his wife from Brunei. But being it they're more oriental, their skin tone is a little more olive. So I'm trying to be mindful of that. And just adding a little bit of a glaze to the side here. And just want to darken that. And then here along its jawline, there needs to be a little bit of shading. So take some straight raw umber dark, a little bit of raw sienna, and just blend that in. You guys see that? Okay, now I want to add just a little bit of a tone right here. It's got to get more golden than that. So I'm trying to get a little more raw sienna in the mix because that has a little more of a yellowish tone to it. And there we go, just under his jawline. Now I have to keep in mind he is younger, so I probably need to give him a tighter jawline than what he has here in the photo. So I'll have to be careful and mindful of that, not to overdo that shadow. Add a little bit right here, and then we can darken around his nose. I just like to check my video and make sure that I'm not getting my hand in the way of what I'm painting. Did a lot of work yesterday trying to get the camera angle so that showed the whole painting, and it also didn't have me covering up anything while I was painting. So I think I got it pretty good though. Now on the woman's face, actually I'm going to take just a bit of burnt sienna. I see that within the reference photo. So burnt sienna added to this mix. And we're just going to darken this shadow. I want to thin it out a bit more. Darken this shadow here. Whoop, that was too dark. I don't know what happened there. Let's just thin that out on this side. Yeah, if I put down something and I don't like it, I immediately wipe it off with my finger, and then I'll just wipe that on a rag. If it's a huge amount, I'll take a damp rag and I'll just, wipe it off. And, well, that's something you can do with acrylic. You can't do that with oil. Okay, let's add a little bit of a shadow from her hair. So we're just building these nuances. I mean, there's so much that's going to have to happen in this painting before I can even begin to say it's close to being done. I mean, there's, oh man, how many hours do I have in this? Maybe 15-ish, 15 to 20, I guess, on the whole thing, you know, sketching and painting. But to have it all finished, I'm thinking probably another 80 hours at least on a big painting like this. And I'm blessed that they are paying me well for the commission, but yeah, I want to make sure it's my best work. You know, I don't want to just slap it together and get it done. So just adding a little bit to the top of this pole. What do you call those things? Walking sticks? I don't know. Anyway, I need to do some hiking or something so I can learn what the names of these poles are. And then I want to start getting in that purple. See this color here, this visor she's wearing, that should be purple. And I thought I could just glaze it in with blue and red, but I really need to use deoxazine purple. That's just a really vibrant pigment, and the red and blue just don't capture it. So I'm going to take deoxazine purple right here. You can see that. And thin it out with the medium. Boy, that's such a strong pigment. Like, it's just, I have to really, really thin it out a lot. And I'm going to use a different brush. That brush just isn't quite performing how I want it to. Okay. We're just going to just slowly glaze that in. Now, I did go over this area with white to add some luminosity to it. So that's just a really, really light glaze, but that'll be enough for now, just to get that color shift happening. I don't even know if you guys can see it on there, but as long as we have this color going, I can see, you know, the backpack she's wearing is also kind of purplish. It's not as vivid as the hat, but it does have a purplish cast to it. So I'm going to take the same color. I'm going to tone it down with just a little bit of ultramarine blue. I'll show you what I'm doing here. And raw umber dark. Umber dark. And see if we can just kind of tone this down. Still a little more raw umber dark and ultramarine blue. Okay, now let's use that. And then we'll darken. Yeah, that could still get darker. See, once you start getting a few layers down, you're gonna get more aggressive with your glazed layers. Does that make sense? Your initial layers are going to be very faint because that's going to allow you the freedom to be able to pivot if you made a mistake. You could say, no, the shape for this certain value is wrong. I should kind of adjust it up here. And you can do that when it's really light. But once you start getting more established, you'll notice that your glazes, if they're still very light, won't make enough of a difference. And then it's just going to take you too long to paint. There's a certain point where you don't want to have it take longer than it should. And so you're going to get more aggressive with your layers. You're going to start using more pigment in your glazes. And that actually is good because then you're going to see changes happening in your painting a lot faster than you did before. And you won't feel like you're just plodding along. You'll actually feel like you're making some progress. So I'm just adding this color over these smaller valued areas. I mean, so we have the general values, we have the local values. I call the local values just these smaller shapes. And then the general value is what covers over the whole area. So I can say, I want to kind of darken this area as a whole, but I still have these smaller shapes that suggest the wrinkles within her backpack. And see, after I do this, then I go back and I'll add some more minute glazes to tie in these dark shadows with this mid-tone. Eventually I'll come back in with some opaque highlights, and yes, I'll actually use some opaque paint and go over these areas and lighten them up. So that's what we're doing right now, and you can see it's darker on the bottom, lighter on the top, which is what we want because that's where the light is hitting. All right, now I could do some work on the background. I'm trying to see if there's a few nuances I could add. You know what might be kind of fun? What if we work on the, I know this isn't dealing with portraits as much, but you know, the whole package of painting a portrait does involve painting backgrounds too. But you know, what might be kind of fun is to work on that, you know, waterfall and landscape in the background. I've kind of neglected that. So I'm going to take some matte medium, see if I can just squirt it generously onto this area. And the colors that I already have, these kind of grayish tones, will probably work for it. Hopefully. Hopefully I can get it light enough with this, because I just want to make a very minor change. So I'm going to stand up here to reach this. I'm going to move this reference over. And then I want to see, you know, that actually is a little too dark. So I'm going to have to add some more medium, thin this glaze out. But I want to just kind of darken in this whole section here. Because eventually it's got to get dark. It can't just be white. And so what's going on here is there's kind of like a little, well, there's a mountain with mist. So all this really, really fun mist down here. And within the mist, there's even a few layers where, you know, there's like cloud banks going through and you can almost see them. But let's actually concentrate on the darker values down here and fade it out to the top. I don't want to overdo that area on the top. I want to preserve the luminosity, and we can preserve the luminosity by hitting the area that's darker. So in this sense, the area down here is darker. There's a cloud bank up here, and I want to just get this part blocked in. You can see I'm going very, very light because there's so many different nuances I'll need to add on top of this. And again, I want to really preserve that luminosity. It also allows me to get the right color because I can keep adjusting and refining my color. I don't have to have it right on the first try. So that makes a difference. Okay, and then over here, let's take a glaze and just add it over this whole area. Yep, and this gray is really the color we need. So I have, basically what I have here is a sketch. And then I have some paint that I put on top of my sketch lines just to kind of blend it in a little more. I think I basically just took a white, like titanium white, mixed with matte medium, and I made the sketch a little more muted, and I added just a bit of green to it. So that's really all there is right now. But taking this grayish color, same color I used for the man here, basically, and just blocking this in. Then I'm going to leave this area here where the waterfall is light. Just leave that light at this point. And let's see, I'm looking at the reference photo. It does kind of fade off on the top. It does fade off, but you know, I'll be going back over this with some titanium white glazes as well. Let's darken this just a bit as we get down to this portion. So not that much. Just a little bit more, because I can see that is darker down there. Got over my trees. I want to preserve that definition between foreground and background. You might not be able to see what I'm doing here at the end, and boy, oh boy, that light is just terrible, isn't it? So as I back away, you can see it. You know what? I'm gonna sit down, and hopefully that'll keep the contrast down. I didn't realize that the light was hitting everything so strongly. Now you can probably see it better. Yeah, we'll just keep sitting down. All right. There, now I think you can see what's going on a little better. Sorry about that. Just part of the process of learning how to set up the cameras and stuff for a big painting like this. Just a little bit different. Okay. We'll add a little bit of a glaze up on the top and just darken that little bit of a mountain that's poking up out of there. And we just want to fade that out by, we'll just feather it and kind of dry brush it out. And that's one way to also build up a little bit of a gradation, is by just letting the amount of paint on your brush to dry up, and you just very, very lightly touch it and just feather it out. And you can really only do that on very light colors, okay? Because the difference between this value and the white is not a huge difference. And so the feathering technique works well for that. If this was a really dark color, you wouldn't be able to do it, because you'd see, you know, the feathering, and it would leave really rough brush strokes, unless you want to go for that look, but it doesn't lend itself to realism very well. And you know, there's actually just a little bit of a highlight just up in here. I didn't sketch that in. I hate to say it, I think I might have to stand for that. I just want to be able to suggest that in. You might not be able to see it as I'm painting, but you will after I sit down. There we go. Just get my exercise in here as I'm leaning and contorting my body in different ways to get that in there. Okay, and then there's even just a little bit of something going on over here that we can just darken in the top of this mountain ever so slightly. Just a little bit. Get that darkened in a little here as well. Need a little more medium to thin this out. Just darken this whole area. And again, there's just a, like I say, a cloud kind of coming through, so I'm trying to leave this area open on the top. Darken that a little bit more down there. And that should be good for just a first layer on that background. Anyway, I'm going to see if you guys have any questions here, and then we'll probably wind this thing down. Okay. Yep. So let's see what questions we have here. What's for lunch? Oh boy, probably leftovers today. Yeah, probably leftovers. So my wife is a fantastic cook, so tonight there'll be something good. Let's see. Mona asks, do you find it hard to see the colors you're trying to mix on the aluminum as it's not white? No. I've gotten really used to it. I think initially it was difficult, but I'm just really used to how the colors look on the aluminum foil. But, you know, it's probably a learning curve. Initially, it'll be hard for anyone that tries using aluminum foil. And I'm not saying you have to use aluminum foil, but, you know, it works for me, and it's a great way to keep on reusing my palette. And thank you, Nasing, I'm not sure what your name is, but thank you for your feedback on the setup. I really try to get a good setup here, but we'll see if we can refine it even more. So, yep, yep. And it did have a little trouble with getting washed out on the sky there. I'm going to have to sit down probably as I paint those parts as much as I can. You got it. What's in their backpacks for lunch? Oh man, I don't know. Probably trail mix. They're probably really healthy. Probably just trail mix. Anyway, Sharon asks, do you help with one working on portraits? Sharon, could you refine that question a little bit more? Do you mean like personal critiques, or what are you looking for? Just give you a chance to answer that. If you're looking for critiques, yes, I do critiques. I have students within Realistic Acrylic Portrait School. Currently, I have like almost 20 people there right now, although I've had well over 100 people take my main course, Paint Your First Amazing Acrylic Portrait. But I have close to 20 people as members within the school, and they get access to a personal critique. And you can go to YouTube on my channel here and see some example. Yep, you can see examples of personal critiques I've done. Just right on this channel here, it'll be, boy, just the last few days I recorded a couple critiques and posted them here, and it's fantastic because you actually can watch me, do a side-by-side comparison of your painting against your reference photo. So if you're, working on a painting and you're like, man, I'm just really frustrated with, the face and, the eyes don't look right or something doesn't look right, I can actually set it up side by side and show you specifically what to change. And I do little annotations right on the video. And you'll see it. If you go to the YouTube channel, check out those videos, you'll see exactly how I do it. But my students love those critiques because it eases their frustration. They're able to make the changes and get their portraits looking way, way better. And man, I mean, I don't know where else you get personal critiques like that. I didn't get that at art school. I mean, we had group critiques. But anyway, Mark, thanks for joining us. And hey, everybody, thank you so much for joining today. We're going to hit the top of the hour in a couple of minutes. So just want to encourage you to join us next week. Let people know about this. In fact, if you registered for the class and then it gave you that option to share it with your friends, if you share this with just a few people, share it on Facebook, YouTube, and anybody you share it with actually ends up joining this class, you'll get all the recordings of this for free at Realistic Acrylic Portrait School. I'll make all these videos available archived. You get them all for free. I'll probably do a couple bonus videos that I won't have up anywhere else, and you'll get access to those as well. Otherwise, this whole course, this bundle of workshops, I'll sell it for $97. But just get a few people to get somebody to join, share it with your friends, and you get it all for free. And you can find out about that on that page where you registered for the course. But anyway, if you're not already subscribed to YouTube here on my channel, I encourage you to subscribe. Check out my tutorials at realisticacrylic.com, and email me if you have any questions on painting, need some personal help. I love answering my emails, love helping people out with their portraits. Just let me know, okay? So anyway, thank you so much, everyone. Just want to personally look you in the face and say thank you so much for coming out here and joining me here in my studio. God bless you and have a happy day in your painting. And God willing, we'll see you here next week. All right, bye for now.